Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John with Murder by the Book, coming to you with another live virtual event. Tonight, we've got something a little bit different than our usual kind of mystery-themed events. We're really excited to have Dylan Powell with us. Dylan is a Houstonian. He's a regular fixture at the store. We were just talking before we went live about he had a list of books that he wants to come in and pick up. So we're really excited to be chatting with him tonight about his newest book. As always, as we're chatting, if you guys have questions, you can leave those in the comments. For the last 20 years, Dylan Powell has been a professional writer in Houston. He's the author of 8 books, including Lost Houston, Houston Then and Now, and 100 Things to Do Before You Die, the second edition, which we're really excited to be one of those things listed in there. He lives on the West Side. If you want more information on his books about Texas, you can visit booksaboutTexas.com. He's also on Twitter as Houston Writer or at his author pages on Facebook and Instagram. How are you tonight, Dylan?
I'm doing great, thanks. Appreciate you having me tonight. This is actually the first virtual book event I've done. See, usually the way this works is I have a book event and then I make an idiot of myself, but only the people who attended know. So this is much better because now there's like a record of me being an idiot and it lives forever on the internet. So thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Well, if it makes you feel any better, there have been moments when McKenna and I've had those too. When she was interviewing Mark Pryor a couple of weeks ago, his internet connection cut out. Like in the middle of it. So there are like these 3 minutes of McKenna live on Facebook going, Mark, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And then like the last thing you hear before that part of the video ends and they restart is her going, well, this is awkward. I missed it live, but so she texted me afterwards and was like, hey, you need to check this out. So welcome to our new world of virtual events.
Thank you. And thank you 2020 for making this possible.
Yeah, we've been really lucky to get up to speed on these pretty quick. Thankfully, other publicists and other booksellers helped us kind of get up and running. But the good thing about this is we're really excited that once the world settles into some semblance of whatever it's going to look like after this is all said and done, that we'll still be able to do some stuff like this and maybe be able to chat more with our author friends that live overseas or people who potentially don't just travel. So kind of the world that it's opened up to us is kind of great.
Oh man, actually, you guys have done a great job with this. And Thanks. One thing I really appreciate is I do get to attend book events and to all these bookstores, nationwide. Mm-hmm. Usually, we got our favorites here in town and you can show up, but that is an upside to this is, being able to attend all those great book discussions, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's been really great to be able to kind of pair up authors that we wouldn't necessarily be able to. Like yesterday, we were able to chat with Ruth Ware and Lisa Jewell, or on Wednesday, we got Megan Abbott to interview Tana French, which would maybe not necessarily have happened geography-wise with Megan not having a new book out. So being able to kind of rope people into interviewing other authors and being able to chat with people that way has been really fun. Yep. So we are here tonight to talk about your newest book, Culture Shock Houston. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Well, the book is basically a cheat sheet for what it's like to live here in Houston. Mainly it was written for people who are about to move here or are thinking about moving here, or maybe just people who are into Houston things, but it's what it's really like to be here and live here. So, you've got the details. Moving is stressful, right? If you've ever moved, you can figure out how to get to work. You can shop for a house, all the logistical things, but it's sort of finding the soul of a city. That could be kind of tricky, and it takes some time. And that period where you're ramping up on things and trying to learn this new city, that is a bit of a culture shock. And that's what this book's really for. It's to lessen that shock and kind of give a cheat sheet of, hey, you're going to live in Houston. Well, here are some things to think about. It was a lot of fun to write.
So when you start a project like that, where do you start to try to capture a city of like Houston that's so big, that's so diverse, has so many different parts of town, that kind of just sprawls on and on? Where do you even begin when you start?
That's a great question. I almost didn't do this project because of that very reason. I'm like, my Houston and your Houston can be very different things. There's so many aspects to people. It's a big, diverse city, like you said, and there's just a lot to it. Then I thought, just try. It's better than nothing, right? It just gives people some general guidelines. We're all different, but it's still pretty warm in winter, so we've got that to start with, right? So I drew on my own experience of moving here 25 years. Hey, who's old? Raise your hand. Ago. Then I asked people, and asked a lot of people. I asked like 300 people, what was shocking about you? What kind of culture shock did you get when you moved to Houston? And I kind of took the answers I kept hearing over and over again, and I put them on a big short list. And about 72-ish made the book. So that's basically what the book is. It's like 200 pages of spread after spread of there's no zoning. Why do people keep saying slime in the ice machine? What does that even mean? What's up with hurricane season? So it's just like 70 something of those things that form a sort of a foundation that before you find your own Houston, the way people tend to do, in general, these are the kind of general things.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned slime in the ice machine, because if you weren't familiar with Marvin Zindler like now, like that has kind of no context. We saw the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas at Tut's the last time they did. It's like my cats are fighting under the they're fighting like right under the coffee table.
Hi, McKenna.
So they we saw, completely derailed my train of thought. We saw Best Little Whorehouse in Texas the last time Tut's did
Speaking
one of their
cat houses.
Yeah. And like halfway through like intermission, the people in front of us were like, wait a minute, I think that this is about that slime in the ice machine guy. It was like, oh, y'all are clearly not from here.
I hear that he had a poster of that in his office of the film, and just that he loved it. I never knew there was so much. He was a Marine, and he was like I think it worked for the sheriff's department for a while. He was like a really interesting guy. People just know him as the goofy guy on the news with the suits and the slime in the ice machine, but man, he had a pretty interesting career.
Yeah, we the store is right down the street from Channel 13, and we've done a couple of events with like Tom Abrams, who writes mysteries. We've had Melanie Lawson come in and interview authors at the store multiple times, and just the times that they've come in and like have randomly told us stories about Marvin. It's always kind of really funny. So what was the thing that when you were asking people kind of about kind of culture shock Houston, what was one of the things that kind of surprised you the most to hear from somebody?
Surprised me the most? I don't know. There was a lot of variety. I guess the thing I learned is that people don't really like change. If you grew up somewhere and then you move somewhere else, people don't always change well. A lot of it's just to do with big city versus where they might not have lived before, being less urban. There's a lot of people here. There's like 6 million people here if you count all the exurban suburbs and stuff like that. And sometimes when people were talking and telling me what it was like, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, this is just not a big city to a big city thing, traffic or things like that. So that was not shocking. A lot of people don't love the heat. That's it's kind of what it is here. But there was a lot of variety too. And I was really surprised at just how many things, like it didn't take much work to get 80 shocking or things you have to get used to once you move here. It didn't take long at all. Like it took maybe a week to pull together. Oh, and another thing, oh my gosh, hang on, I think I'm good now. I've got all these things. I was cutting them at the end. There were so many.
The heat's always fun to see, in normal times when we would have visiting authors come through and have some poor person from like England or something come visit the bookstore in the middle of August and just be like, oh my God. And you're like, yeah, no, it's just like this all the time. This is just how we live. That's why everything's air conditioned and nobody ever goes outside.
I appreciate that you mentioned our cousins across the pond. I did allow for some overlap in just Texas things versus Houston things. Because if you move here from Dallas or San Antonio, you might be used to the fact that people like doctors and lawyers and accountants drive pickup trucks that are enormous. Well, why? You do not need a truck. Why do you drive a truck? Who knows? It's a cultural thing. Or the fact that people drink like 6-7 gallons of iced tea during a Tex-Mex lunch, or that we love HEB and Whataburger and Buc-ee's and all that. Those sort of things are not surprising to someone from another Texas city. But if you move here from Germany or Kansas, that's like a real thing, So I wanted to have some kind of overlap between Texas things. I allowed a few Texas things in there just to account for, expats and people like that.
When so I'm originally from Delaware and we moved to Houston. We lived up in the Woodlands, but like we moved down here in like 1989. I was like 11 years old. So I remember when my dad told me that he was getting transferred, then we were living down here. You know, you have that assumption that it's at that point, like it's Texas, is like, it's all going to be cowboys. It's going to be the desert. Like I remember asking, this was also around the same time that like the killer bees were supposed to be coming up from Mexico and like gonna like take over the US. But I remember asking.
I thought you meant the band for a second.
And like I just remember being like asking my dad, like, so well, do they still have like movies there? Do they have like, because you would think, and I think that that's still you know, one of the things that you hear people talk about Houston all the time is that Houston is just one of those cities that sort of has an image problem because people hear Texas and they don't know kind of
It's
what
so true. Yeah, there's no established brand here. It's funny. Yeah, you're right. When I was in college, my parents, hi mom and dad, if you're watching, thanks for the European trip. Sent me to school in London for a little while as part of an exchange program, and people would ask me, you know, oh, so what's it like owning a horse? You know, I was like, I don't know. Yeah, used to have a Mustang. Does that count? You know, so if you're you know, just like when you were younger, you know, if you're not from Texas and you don't know what to think about Houston, you know, you think it's cowboy cliches and things like that. And if you are from Texas, you assume that like Houston is this hellscape of steel and concrete, where the minute you get here in 5 minutes, someone's going to steal the wheels off your car, you know, and that's not true either, because they can get the wheels in like 2 minutes, and the other 3 minutes are for the airbag and the you know, the tailgate. So
yeah, it's crazy to think about just kind of the scope of the city, because like, you know, like you said, you've been here for 25 years. I've been here for over 20 years. And you know, you kind of get used to this big sprawl and kind of this big city. When some of the kind of voting issue stuff was coming up, people were talking about how just Harris County itself is bigger than like the population of like the city of Portland. Or no, I'm sorry, just the population of Harris County is bigger than like the population of the state of like Oregon. And just to think about kind of
it's crazy,
the
right?
scale, it's insane. And you just, I guess, kind of when you've been here for a while, you know, it doesn't seem like it's that big, but at the same time, like it does if you have to drive from one end of town to the other.
Yeah, yeah. You know what they say? Houston's an hour from Houston. You know,
Yeah.
like you know, if you live in Clear Lake, it's not like you can't date somebody from Cyprus, but it better be love. Yeah, I just last week we spent on vacation in the Big Bend area out in Terlingua, and every time we go out there, one of the shocking things we come back home is just there's so many people everywhere. There's people everywhere, and we get back and there's like no people out there. When you get back here, it's like, oh man, we live like this. Whoa. And then in like a day, it's normal again.
Yeah, it's always fun when we're setting up events for publicists to try to figure out, okay, if this author is going to fly in at this time, oh, it's only going to take them like 20 minutes to get to the store from the airport. And we're like, no, even if there's no traffic, it's going to take you longer than 20 minutes to get from Bush down to Murder by the Book. And that's like with no traffic, and there is never not traffic.
That's so true. You know, and at the same time, if you look at like these tier one other global cities like London, capital cities like Shanghai and things like that, you go to there and you come to Houston, you're like, oh, it's so cute. It's got all this green space, you know?
Yeah.
It's really not that big.
Sorry, my light, it's not cooperating. There we go. Okay, so
you're gonna come back with a cat.
Yeah, he's curled up right over here on the floor. I'm sure he'll make an appearance at some point. So you've done other books about Houston, as we mentioned. You've done, you know, you did 1,000 things or 100 things to do in Houston before you die. Last year you did Secret Houston. So was having already done a couple of similar books like this to Houston, did that give you a good jumping off point to start with this one?
It did. Although, you know, and I tried to include a mix of things in this book, like there's weird weather things and just things about the cityscape and getting around town and all that. And those other books didn't really help that much for this stuff. But I also included some things like events that are a big deal here, like the rodeo, and just like destinations, like cool destinations that are kind of off the beaten path. And those books definitely help in that respect with these other things. I thought they would help a whole lot and that it would be super easy to write, but it took me like 6 months to write. And I was like, oh, no, this book is definitely about something different because, you know, it's really a lot of lifestyle things that aren't really relevant. But in that respect, I think it's actually can be a more interesting book for someone in the right situation who's about to move here because You know, when you're thinking about moving somewhere, take a new job somewhere, you know, you can get online and read like the Chamber of Commerce stuff.
Mhm.
And that's helpful. Hey, cool. You know, like New York will tell you all about, you know, Broadway shows and stuff like that. You know, like they don't tell you about like Sniper Fire and, you know, like it's like you have to get like real information about the plays. And I hope that I did a good job of showing it warts and all, you know, and just not good, bad, and weird, like just some weird things.
Yeah. So you mentioned, kind of polling people to see kind of what were some of those culture shock things. So once you kind of get that and you kind of narrowed it down to your topics, what kind of research do you do when you actually sit down to start writing?
Well, first I try to think about my own experiences because that always helps flesh things out a bit. And then for every aspect, I try to do some secondary research where, you know, like one of the things that I touch on in the book is there's no basements in houses here. Like you probably grew up as a child in Delaware, like with a basement, right? Do you guys have a
Mhm.
basement?
Yeah.
And I'm super jealous of my friends who live up north. I mean, in this respect, and in the Midwest, because they all have these basements and they put these insane like man caves down there with pool tables. I'm like, what's up with that? We didn't have anything like that here. You know, how come we don't have basements? And I honestly didn't really know the answer. Well, I knew part of the answer was like the water table's quite high here because we're like 6 inches above sea level. That's not quite true. Actually, I bet after Harvey, everybody knows exactly how many feet above sea level their house is. I think mine is exactly 78. But so I tried to do secondary research to like for that instance, what are the exact reasons why they don't have basements here? It turns out it's a lot of stuff that I didn't really think about. Like up north, when they build a house, they have to dig below the frost line, which is actually quite deep most of the time. Here, it's about like literally 6 inches, and you know, there's like 2 cold days a year that'll kill all your plants that you're too lazy to move in, and then after that, we're done. But since you've already dug all this area under the house, they're like, well, you might as well make another living space and charge more money for the house. So it like makes sense. And so there's that and the water table and like just the soil composition here, like the clay soil is very expansive and compressive with water, or like mostly expansive with water. And so it's difficult to have such a structure down here. That's why everybody has foundation problems down here. Take it from me, I spent a ton of money fixing the foundation of my house. But you know, like I wouldn't have known all of those things if I'd doing a bit of secondary research. And you know, I think the back of the book is like citations. It's like 30 pages of citations, from various things I could find. And then it's just writing it out.
Yeah, I spent a very large portion of my childhood in basements with my grandparents because that was always like the room where all the toys were in the kid playroom where it was like, okay, you guys are being loud, go hang out in the basement. Or several of my aunts and uncles lived in like the basement at my grandparents' place. So yeah, when we moved, there weren't basements. It was like, well, this is very strange. So Trisha asks in the comments, she says, when researching, do you come across any interesting mysteries or conspiracies related to Houston or its greater area?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, man, there's always something, like any big city, there's something under every rock, I had a pretty specific focus with this book, but maybe that'd be another great book, Mysteries of Houston. Hey, who's going to write that?
So for this one, when was it something that because you've done several books with Reedy Press before, was it something like they potentially already had like a series of these books and they said, hey, do you want to do one for Houston, or did you have the idea and take it to them?
It was a series thing. It's funny. I don't know if you know who James Altucher is. He's like a New York banker. He always says that there's a good reason for something and then the real reason. Like the good reason for me to write this book is that even with 2020 being the way it is, so many people are moving here. Bigger cities are raising taxes. Crime is a little worse in some parts of the country, and I don't know how it is in your neighborhood, but we're seeing people from California and New York, coming to look at houses, and for them it's relatively cheap, what they're used to. And so there's just so many people moving here now. That's a great time to write the book. The real reason, though, was that it was a series. And for this kind of topic, the publisher thought that there might be room for a bit of humor and thought that I did that relatively well in some of my other books. And that's why he had me in mind for this. And like I said, I almost didn't do it because I thought, you can get culture shock moving from the Heights to Katy. So, I mean, what am I going to say about culture shock in general in Houston? But I'm glad I did because it was a lot of fun. I think it will help a lot of people out.
Yeah. Yeah, our neighborhood's like that. We have a lot of kind of young professionals that live here. So a lot of our neighborhood, it's all townhomes, but they're all like for rent, and they come like they turn over so quick because it's people that are coming and they're going to school and then they buy their own homes. Um, so it's always, we have no idea who any of our neighbors are because it changes.
Well, don't worry. Next hurricane, you'll meet all of them. It'll be fantastic.
Right.
You'll borrow each other's chainsaws. It'll be great.
Yeah. So, and then also when you're working on this, how do you know, I guess kind of the tricky part of it would be like, how do you know what stuff to include that you think, I mean, I guess culture shock gives you a little bit more wiggle room than like 100 things to do before you die. But how do you know kind of how to choose which stuff potentially has staying power and what stuff like is kind of temporary and isn't going to be an issue for long?
It was really hard. I think the one of the biggest filters that I used was just variety. Just there would be the things that for me were shocking, but stepping back and saying, hey, like you're you. What about other people? What would other people think? And sometimes I'd filter a lot out. It's like, yeah, that's not weird for most people. That's just weird for you. I moved here from Lubbock, so trees are weird. But yeah, so that was a big filter that I used. Let's see, what else? Yeah, trees and grass were both pretty novel.
Yeah. And then so you also did before this, you did the photography books like Lost Houston and Houston Then and Now. Can you talk a little bit about the process of doing those? Did you just write the text for it, or did you do the photos for them as well?
I did the majority of the photos, which was really a lot of fun, but also a lot of work. It was tricky because we had the COVIDs going on. And so there were some things that I just couldn't, you asked me about things to include, not include. Actually, COVID-19 helped me out on this front because I had a lot of things that really touted like the restaurant scene here. That got really tricky and sensitive with so many small businesses like that being under pressure. Like, did you ever go to Killen's and eat barbecue down in Alvin, or is Pearland or Alvin where it is? One of the things, even like Truth over here, the lines for barbecue restaurants are insane. And so one of the things I originally had was like, Houstonians will wait in line hours for barbecue. We just will. But when COVID-19 hit, I thought, that's not probably a great thing to talk about. So I took that one off the table, and also I had a bunch of restaurant stuff, like how just competitive it was here. And it still is, it's even more competitive, I'm sure, because they're fighting for the market share that's left. But the restaurant business, you can't just like open up some mediocre thing. You'll just be out of business, and it's super competitive. A lot of those restaurant type things, I really pared down to make sure that it wasn't in poor taste with all those businesses being under pressure. And yeah, that definitely helped me filter some things out. But that wasn't your original question, was it? I can't remember.
No, I was asking about the process of doing Houston Then and Now and Lost Houston.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and we were at photos. Yeah, so some of these, I did the majority of the photography in March and April, and it was really, March and April here, people were pretty freaked out, and I was really mostly concerned with like staying everybody's way and not making anyone uncomfortable with my, there's like a global pandemic, so my funny little book wasn't really I wanted to, it's an important project for me and for everybody involved, the publishers and everybody else, and I am really excited about it, and I want to do a good job with it. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, there's people could be like, they're setting up tents outside hospitals for, it was like kind of ramping up. Then I was like, yeah, I'll just get the pictures that I need from some places, and then and when it got too sensitive or tricky, I pulled a few stock photos and did some other things to try and make it a little more manageable throughout the process. But it was fun. I enjoyed taking pictures. I'm not a professional photographer. I really appreciate the ones that I hire and that I work with, because that's a really tricky art. It's one of those things that's so difficult to do really well that I'm a photographer because there's an auto button. Like if you took away the auto button, I'd be like, I don't know, I'm done, I quit. It's no more book. But it was really cool.
Your mom says, I know I'm your mother, but this is a great interview. She says, now sit up straight.
Thanks, Mom. I'm glad you came, Mom. My mom has a busy social calendar. I wasn't sure if she'd make it.
That's also a first for a virtual event for us, where the author's mom has chimed in. So thank you for that. So that's kind of just knowing kind of the book world in general. That's kind of crazy to me that you were still working on this like in kind of March and April. So when did you actually turn in the finished product for this?
I think like June. June
Wow.
1st, I think was my, I had July 1st, actually. That was July
Mhm.
1st. So they were kind of fast tracking it up there.
And so then after you turn it in, what is the editing process like? Do you have like normal kind of like copy editors for publishers that like fact check stuff, or is it pretty much like what is that process like?
Yeah, the team is fantastic. You know, it's your typical deal where I'll work with a copy editor on copy edits. They do some fact checking. They do put a bit of trust in us. I'll get galley arcs and we'll go through everything. And you know, they're really good about the publishers at Reedy Press are really good about giving you some freedom, but also supporting you. And I say it's a smaller press because it's a small. They call themselves a smaller press, but they got a lot of titles, and it's all regional interest stuff like this for the most part. And they've really got the process down. You know, I don't want for anything there. It's really, I've got it kind of nailed. You know, this is like if you count the novella I wrote last year for the Guns and Tacos series, this is my 9th book. So I've worked with I think 4 different publishers now. And you know, you get varying levels of service, and probably no names named, but like the worst one was probably the biggest one. Like these guys are small enough to where there's like 4 people working on my project. There's a copy editor who's like on it, you know, and then there's someone else doing other things, and there's like, you know, there's an art director who's doing the design, and who's really open to input and stuff like that. And so it's just been a really great experience.
Yeah, they've been really great on our end too, and I would
Oh,
imagine
good.
kind of the like the kind of quick turnaround just has to come with kind of the nature of what they publish, doing kind of those kind of local interest things where you're featuring like local businesses and things like that. I imagine they have to turn that out pretty quick to make sure that all the information in it stays current.
Probably helps that it's a, you know, the series aspect does help because you
Mhm.
know things are somewhat there's kind of a format for things that you know words have to go here and you know.
Mhm. So Trisha asks, did you learn anything in your research that you didn't get to include that you'd like to explore maybe in a standalone title or at a later date?
Well, now maybe the mysteries of Houston. I don't know. Maybe there's a conspiracy theory book happening here. Oh man, uh, you know, this is a city's a big mess. There's a lot of stuff. You know, the problem that I don't know about other writers, but the problem that I always have is there's a there's a list of concepts this long, and there's just the same number of hours in the day. So sometimes, you know, I kind of have to stop thinking about new projects and work on whatever the thing is in front of me, or I'll just get me personally, I just get like paralysis. I'm like, well, it's too much to do. I'm just not doing anything. Let's go watch some Netflix. You know? So it's a good question, but and I'll have to think about what I'm going to tackle next because there's some interesting things. And you know, it's just like interesting places and people all over the city. You never know who you're going to meet, and you know, it's a big, beautiful mess.
So Trisha also wants to know, was there anything that you learned after publication of the book that you wish that you could have gone back and included?
Hmm. I don't know. There were a lot of moving pieces. What with COVID-19, you know, I had to like some things went out of business, and some I had to go back and make some changes. I was very aware that like this might be a fluid process.
Yeah.
You know, a couple months in, um, but nothing in particular that I wish I had included because I kind of, you know, I kind of wish I had 100 or more. Like there's like, and you know, at one point you just have to kind of say, hey, this will do. You know, like I'm only going to get, it's just these, and it's a good start. And maybe we can talk about some other things.
Yeah.
Um, I did have to cut some things at the end. I had to cut some interesting things actually, like, you know, Houston is, I didn't know this, but it's the origin of, oh, is that Katie? Hey, Katie.
Yep.
Um,
You can say hi. That's Calvin.
Hello. It's the origin of what people call Viet Cajun cuisine, which is
Oh,
like
uh-huh.
a, you know, I don't know if you're a big fan, but you know, I can get too much crawfish kind of fast, but I thought it was like a fascinating melange of cultures that you know, it's popular in New Orleans, but that most people seem to agree started here in Houston. And there's like some really fantastic restaurants around here. One of them's like called Crawfish and Noodles. It's over on Bel
I
Air.
heard, yeah.
And there's another one on Wilcrest. Can't think of the name right away, but like this food cuisine was started here, like specifically, and now it's like, you know, getting popular everywhere. So that was kind of interesting, but I had to cut that I can't remember why. For some reason I had to cut that one. Also, I think I ended up cutting the spread about constables. Like, what is a constable? Like, you have the police, you get that. You have like a county sheriff. What is a constable, you know? I had to end up cutting that one as well. Just some of those, some of the food stuff. Yeah, it's tough to narrow it down.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine kind of with the food scene in Houston and the way it's grown so long. I mean, I imagine you could write an entire book just on that and still not have enough room. And I guess if there were things that like you potentially weren't able to include, there's always, if they do an updated version, you could always do, you know, include
For
some
sure.
second edition. So you mentioned you haven't kind of started on your next project yet.
I haven't. I'm working on some fiction things right now, and I'll probably end up doing some fiction projects from now to the end of the year, and I'll probably get on the nonfiction next year. So I've got like a half dozen projects in various stages of completion, and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to feel like doing in the spring.
Yeah. So actually, Linda, her question had just popped up and said, have you ever tried any other kind of writing? And if so, are you planning to follow up on that in publication? So what kind of fiction do you, I know the answer to this, but what kind of fiction do you
written some mysteries. Yeah, mostly short fiction. I haven't had a mystery novel published yet, though I have written one. If anyone has any mice in their attic or any unwanted literary agents, I can loan you the manuscript and it'll run everyone off. But I've had a bit of success with short fiction. I published a novella last year. It was part of the Down and Out Books, Guns and Tacos series. That was a lot of fun. And so I think the year before that, I had a short story in the Best American Mysteries prior to all the controversy about that. And then, yeah, I think I have a story coming out in Ellery Queen, short story coming out in Ellery Queen sometime soon. I've been so busy with this book, I don't know if it's run yet, but I still do the odd short fiction. Actually, this week on vacation, I wrote my first ever horror short story, which just happened by accident. And then the novel I'm working on right now is like a martial arts action thriller kind of thing, which kind of came out of nowhere. But I'm, you know, when you start a project, you should finish a project. So I'm going to write it out and see where it takes me.
Awesome. So how does your writing process differ when you're working on kind of short fiction novels, kind of that kind of fiction stuff, versus writing nonfiction like Culture Shock Houston?
Well, it is very much more organic process, and it's funny because I tend to think of like short fiction and novels for me are two very different processes, because I can think of an idea for a short story over a sandwich at lunch, and I can write a draft write and polish draft over the next 6 weeks, and then sell it, and then I don't have to think about it again. But novels, I'm not a pantser. I'm definitely a plotter. So, you know, I've got spreadsheets and character sketches, and it looks like a beautiful mind in my office, and it's really kind of scary. So it's very detailed, but I'm definitely the foundation between both of those types of writing for me is planning. I'm definitely a planner, and I think maybe it comes from my commercial copywriting, you know, part where it's like you have to have a strategy and a timeline. You know, like don't start anything until you know it's gonna, you know, you can't mess this up. You know, I really respect writers like the late Ben Kreider or Bill Kreider, who was just a fantastic guy, but he would pants these elaborate mysteries just out of his head. And I'm like, dude, how do you do that? He's like, oh, they just come to me. I'm like, that's amazing. I'm not quite there. I'm definitely a planner.
Yeah, when we were yesterday, when I was talking to Ruth Ware and Lisa Jewell, Ruth Ware was like, no, I have to know where I'm going. Like, she's like, I don't have to know every detail, but I at least have to know where the story's going when I start. And Lisa Jewell was like, same thing. She's like, oh, I just sit down and write, and this is what happens. And it's like, you have like 6 characters in this book all doing these different things, and you just like, it all just comes together. That's just
insane.
Baffles me. Yeah.
What does the inside of your head look like?
Yeah. So on the flip side of that, when you are not writing, what do you like to read for pleasure?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, I'm a big mystery fan, and I just pick up random books. Earlier in the summer, I bought some nonfiction books, and started, like, I was reading one about salt. It's just a book about salt, like composition, history, cultural impacts, things like that. It was super interesting. I'm kind of eclectic. Like an estate sale kind of thing I was at. I bought a bunch of books on birding recently, so it was like reading a book on cardinals. I don't know, of course I love mystery fiction. I just bought but haven't had a chance to read Blacktop Wasteland,
Oh,
which looks really good. Like my default is mystery fiction, and I'll just read that if nothing else happens, and I kind of work to mix it up a little bit.
we, speaking of Blacktop Wasteland, I'm just looking on the website so I can get all this info right. So we've done a couple of events with Sean Cosby, the author of it, but next Tuesday, the 20th, he's going to be interviewing Christopher Chambers and Gary Phillips on
Cool.
Facebook. So we're super excited about that.
That's awesome. I met him at the bar at Bachelor Con last year, and he is just the nicest guy. I can't wait to read that book. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, I think they just started, they're doing BachelorCon virtually this year, and I think they just started airing the virtual panels in the last couple of days. So it's crazy to me that the amount of work that would go into trying to do all of that virtually and organize all of that kind of makes me want to weep just a little bit.
I know, right? Is it in New Orleans next year that I read that?
Yeah.
I think I was planning on going to that, because I don't think virtual would be the same in New Orleans. They'd have to get a stranger to come to your house and mug you or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So this year it was supposed to be in Sacramento, and then so hopefully next fall we'll be able to actually have conventions and gather in some way and actually be able to do it in person, because I think we're potentially going to be booksellers for it again too. We're looking forward to being able to go to New Orleans and work and play at the same time.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's that really great bookstore in Pirates Alley. Oh man, where Faulkner used to live.
Oh,
is that place still around?
I think it is. They also just got a new speculative fiction bookstore that I'm completely blanking on the name for. That's mostly sci-fi, fantasy.
That's cool.
Yeah, the American Booksellers Association has just started. They're trying to really embrace genre fiction more than they have in the past with indie bookstores. So they've just created some genre task force to get booksellers together to talk about mystery. So I'm on the mystery one, but I got to meet the owner of the sci-fi bookstore in New Orleans, and I'm completely blanking on the name of the store, but I'm really excited to check it out next time I'm there.
Maybe he erased your memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sci-fi.
Yeah, which is great because there aren't a ton of stores like that out there. Let's see. So we talked a little bit about kind of the writing through the COVID process. So what has that been like for you? Were you actually able to kind of get your butt in the chair and get stuff done? And as part of that, just because you knew that you had a tight deadline to get the book in?
Oh yeah, I'm what I don't have in talent, I make up in work ethic. So like I'll put in some work. Basically my day goes, I'll get up at 4:30 or 5 and I'll work on my personal projects for a few hours, and then I'll go to my day job where I also do copywriting. And I'll do that all day. And then, if I've got anything left, I may do it again later, but probably I'm drinking. Yeah, getting in front of the desk isn't a problem. I'm a worker for sure.
Yeah. And so Tricia asks, because you are a plotter, what are some of the must-haves that you need for your writing space to kind of sit down and work?
Oh, I have one of these big flip things on an easel, like with the big sticky. I don't use the sticky bit, but I definitely use a giant oversized pad on an easel, and I typically I'll plot it out and I'll print. I use an Excel spreadsheet actually for various reasons. Like I'm not like Jeffrey Deaver level yet insane about it, but I do have to know in general what's going to happen. I'll print it out all chronologically, and most of the novels that I've written have been like 80, 90, 100,000 words. So like the plot will fit on one of those big things. So I'll put So I've got to have one of these little easels with, I'll put all my character sketches and all my plot points, and that way I can get up and I'll know, oh, today I have to write the chapter with the thing, this needs to happen. So then I can sit down and write, and I know what I'm going to write. And usually I think about it the night before, and that helps. Just let your brain do the work. It likes to do that sort of thing, and then let it fly. So definitely that. More than anything, just silence. I just need a quiet place. When limited internet helps especially for writing fiction. Otherwise, it's like top 10 tandoori restaurants. Yeah, forget the word count.
Yeah, one of my favorite photos of an author is Jackie Suzanne, who wrote Valley of the Dolls. There's a photo of her, and she's got this big giant whiteboard behind her, and like the plot of something is like on it, and she's just like sitting on the floor in her little poochy dress, like looking at note cards as she's sitting there like plotting out her novel. That's how I like envision everybody writes their books, with these just
That's
big
awesome.
boards behind them.
That's great. And my dog Scout helps. She sits on the couch, and it seems more calm when she's sitting there.
Yeah. Awesome. So if you guys have joined us late here on Facebook, we have been talking with William Dylan Powell about his new book, Culture Shock Houston. I dropped a link, you can order it online. We're going to be figuring out, which I owe you an email, Dylan, to figure out. He's going to drop by the store at some point and sign some stock for us. So if you want signed copies, if you know any people that might be moving to Houston, or you want fun gifts for Houstonians for the holidays, you can order those at murderbooks.com. If you want to personalize, you can include any of that info in the order comments, and we will get him to do that. Quick store update. We are still at the moment doing appointments on Fridays and Saturdays and curbside pickup for the rest of the week, but we are now starting to talk about what opening back up to the general public is going to look like. So keep an eye on the newsletter in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have some more details about when you'll be able to come into the store and browse. We just want to make sure that we can get all of our ducks in the row and make sure it's safe for everybody. We're really excited to have people back in the store again. It's been very weird just have the four of us locked in the store. I think I was talking with Ruth Ware yesterday about this, the last actual in-store author event we did was like March 13th.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, you're a regular fixture at the store, just how crazy it is for us to go that long without
Crazy.
I think so the only actual authors that we've had in the store, we had Martha Wells, who lives in College Station, who's a sci-fi author. She dropped by and signed stock for us in May. And then SC Perkins, Stephanie, when her new book came out, she dropped by and did some social distancing stock signing for us. But that's been like it for like 6 months. So we're super excited to have people back in the store. And if I don't know if I said this, if you missed the first part of the chat, you can, as soon as we're done talking, Facebook will archive it, so you'll be able to catch the rest of it. Dylan, thank you so much for chatting with us this evening. It's been really great to talk with you, even not in the store, but still being able to do it this way. So
thanks for having me. It's always good to catch up.
Yeah, of course. So take care, and we will see you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.